All right, folks, here we are. We are finishing up our ecology unit. We're coming into the end of the entire school year. And before we go any further, just to make sure that everybody is clear on it, I want to show you this. Remember, in Schoology, I have gone through and I've set up all of our work right here. A marking period for work. And when you click on that, here is every assignment that I have given out for the entire 10 weeks that marking period for has been. In the case that they're so large that it requires more than one file, like our evolution project, it's a folder. And inside, it's got all the stuff. I've relabeled, I've reorganized. If you were to take a look at something like the Variations Through Time Lab, and having looked at it, you say to yourself, wow, I have no idea how to do this. What are all these pictures? What do they mean? That is where this first file, master list of all marking period for work and YouTube links go. Click on it, and here are all of the files. Here's the day that they occurred, the color of the folder, and here is a link to the YouTube video that I recorded to explain them. So all of them should be doable. I mean, if you've been working all 10 weeks, if now you're trying in the last 7 days to get 10 weeks worth of work done, it may not be possible. And I'm okay with that. So, marking period for work in the clear folder at the bottom of the list in every single biology class. Marking period for work. It's all described right there. All right, so let's get into today. Today, I've got a couple things for you. As today is Tuesday, the test is coming up on Thursday. I decided to set up a review largely for today, and that's going to take place two different ways. The first way is click on our folder for Tuesday, June 9th. We've got an ecology review slideshow. And then I have an ecology review on quizzes. Now, the quizzes one will lock and close tomorrow, Wednesday, June 10th at 10 p.m. So you got lots of time if you want to go through and use it. You can take this quiz an unlimited number of times. So if you don't do well, do it again. Don't do well that time, do it again. This is practice for the coming test. So, let's go over exactly what our review is. So, keep in mind, I'm going to go through this real quick because we've already seen all of it. I just want to make sure that everybody gets that full list in their head for what things have we gone over, because with this online format, it's real easy to kind of lose track about what we've been talking about, what we've been working on. So remember, ecology and the definition, the study of the environment and the interactions. The key idea about it is all about biodiversity, all about whether or not we have enough different living things in an area. You've got to know all of your terms, biotic and abiotic. We've got to know our autotroph, heterotroph, decomposer, and of course niche, which is one of the terms that we just went over recently. So make sure you know what those are and what they do. You should not expect on the test to ever see words like plant or animal. It will always be autotroph or consumer or something like that. The levels of organization, you just have to keep in mind the difference. The organism is a single one, like a squirrel. The population is all the squirrels in an area. The community is all the squirrels, the raccoons, the chipmunks, all the populations in an area. The ecosystem is now all of those living and non-living things, and the biosphere is a planet. Interactions is how one influences another one, could be positive, could be negative. Interdependence is how things get really connected by evolving together for so long. One's existence is directly tied to the survival of the other. And if one of them goes away, like the dodo bird going extinct, we see the dodo tree is starting to follow because they were that tightly intertwined in their evolution and their survival. We talked about energy flow on Earth As a general rule, all energy comes from the sun. It is the energy for all life. There are exceptions, but don't worry about those. Those are not, they are rare, they are few, and they still function off the same idea. You will still have producers, they just don't use sunlight, they use some other energy. This is the actual photosynthesis reaction. You really don't need this one so much. Food chains are that simple step by step, which would be great, except an environment doesn't have only grass, only beetles, only frogs, and only red tailed hawks. So that means that while a food chain is good, a food web is a much better example of how energy is moving through an ecosystem. Because we have multiple predators, multiple herbivores, things like that. In our ecological pyramids, remember the size of the slice, the size of the layer, is going to be the most important thing. If it's the biggest layer, it has the most. If it's the smallest layer, it has the least. And it doesn't matter what you talk about. The biggest layer will always have the most. The smallest layer will always have the least. You may look at something like a lion and say, well, a lion's 800 pounds. How could producers weigh more than 800 pounds? Well, think about all the grass, all the trees, all that stuff added together. Way more than 800 pounds. For energy transfer, this is a really key concept. Remember, we only get 10% of the available energy from one level to the next. Most of it is lost as heat. Most of it just sort of dissipates out from the organism into the environment. All right, ways things that it can influence each other. Number one, competition. Super, super common, happens all the time because everything needs enough area. Clicked wrong. Enough area, enough food, and enough mates. And if they don't, well, then they got to compete. Most animals will try to find ways to avoid competition. The stork and the ducks live in the same area, but they eat different foods. No competition. The giraffe and the zebra live in the same area and eat the same food, but the zebra will eat it from the ground, and the tall boy here will eat it from the trees. So, between those two, even though they're eating the same food, they're not going to compete over it because they got it from different areas. We see birds will live in different areas and parts of the trees in order to avoid competing with one another. The largest birds live near the bottom, the smallest birds live near the top. Now, when it comes to mates, yeah, then there's usually going to be some form of competition. Keep in mind though, usually it's not dangerous. These two fight, those are dangerous. Those are terrifying. If you could see two silverback gorillas launching themselves at each other like this and not feel some primal part of your being terrified of it, reassess who you are and how you feel. Because, all right, so side tangent. A chimpanzee is 8 times stronger than an adult human male, pound for pound. I am fat. So I weigh 250 pounds. Now, if you divide 250 by 8, that means that a 30-pound chimpanzee would be roughly my equal in strength. Now, a gorilla is roughly 12 times stronger than a human being pound for pound. And a male silverback gorilla will weigh nearly a ton. Now, imagine the amount of force, the strength that this animal can deliver. This kind of an impact between gorillas may be fine, but if there was a human being there, we would shatter like an egg. And then there's always predation, you know? Predators want to eat stuff. So you gotta try to avoid getting eaten. Sometimes this is called an evolutionary arms race because what's going to happen is we are going to see the predator get better at seeing, better at catching, some adaptation that gives it an edge. Well, that means that the prey are going to go extinct unless they evolve better camouflage, better mechanisms to hide, which means now the predator has to evolve, and now the prey. and over again, it leads to this incremental series of increases that results in organisms that are superhuman in their capabilities. The bird sticking its head out of the hole right here, well camouflaged. A lot of people have issues seeing the cicada. This is it right there, thanks to that camouflage. So just keep in mind, if you don't want to get eaten, you gotta have a way to avoid it. Then we have our forms of symbiosis. So remember the symbols: plus minus, plus zero, plus plus. There's always going to be somebody that benefits in this arrangement. The question is, what is that second symbol? If it's a negative, that's parasitism. One is gaining, the other one's losing. Commensalism is a zero. One is gaining, the other one really isn't affected by it. And then there's mutualism. Both benefit, both gain. We then talked about succession, the difference between primary and secondary. Primary succession would happen on bare rocks, and it would start to build up that soil amount. And as the amount of soil builds, you get more and more larger plants moving in. They outcompete the earlier plants and drive them extinct in this area. And so we have like the environment change and evolve over time until it reaches its end state of climax community. Ponds are gonna go through succession too, but remember, first they have to fill in. This was a question on the Regents a number of years ago. They wanted you to put these in the correct order. So remember, if it has to fill in first, you would start with the most empty one, and then opposite it, the most filled in. Then you just look between the two that are left, and how should they go? So it should have went B, C, A, D. All right, now when we take the precipitation of an area and the temperature of an area, that is what is going to give us our biomes. And remember, we went over these six. So you should be, at least a little bit familiar with them. There's a couple of keys here. The deserts will always be dry. That's their key. If it talks about anywhere dry, take a look through all of these. Right? You don't see a whole lot of dry. Dry is a trait of the desert. Rainforests are easy to pick out because they've got a lot of both. Coniferous and deciduous forests are identical to each other. The taiga gets complex to try to pick out. So all you need to do, since these two are cold ones, the taiga and the tundra, is watch for the term permafrost. Permafrost is the key term that only the tundra has. So if you hear cold and permafrost, it's got to be the tundra. If you hear cold, but they don't say permafrost, it's the taiga. Our marine biomes, don't worry about these. We talked briefly about them. I have them here because we did talk about them, but you are not going to see any questions based on them. Estuaries, that's a good thing to know. Just knowing that this is where a river meets an ocean, and that this is the most productive zone on Earth. Then we started getting into our human impacts. Our introduced species. You guys did a project on that, so I'm not going to go over it. Habitat destruction. We took a look at all the different ways that this can happen through deforestation, industrialization, urbanification, all of those. And then keep in mind, we also talked about things like monocultures, global warming, and yeah, that's it. That's our review. Any questions? So keep in mind, there is, once again, a review quiz available for everybody to try right there in the Tuesday, June 9 Schoology folder. Tomorrow, we're going to do something a little bit different. I don't know if I'm going to be recording tomorrow, but I'll definitely be here live, and I'm going to have questions, and I'm going to put them up on the screen. I'm going to give you guys a chance to answer them. Throw your answers into the chat over here, and then we'll go over them. We'll discuss them. We'll see what do people have right, what do people have wrong, and what can I help clarify as we're right on the wire. The test will be Thursday. There will be no class. I will have the test go live at 11 a.m. The test will be live until the 16th, so Tuesday of next week. Um, it should take email addresses, unlike last time. And yeah, then for the last few days, I have some little fun, interesting things that I'm gonna do, but it won't be anything graded. If you have work to do, use that time to get your work done. And hopefully tomorrow I will have an update for you for exactly what Wednesday the 17th will hold. If everything can be figured out appropriately, we may not be meeting like this. I may actually see you guys if you choose to show up for at least a moment or two, which I hope so. But I'll be able to let you know more tomorrow. I have my meeting with Miss Gilio today. So, with that, I hope to see everybody tomorrow for review and then our test on Thursday.